Happy Wednesday, everyone. My name is Eric Sleeth. I'm the Marketing and Strategy Specialist here at Veriday. I'm excited to have with me our Chief Operating Officer, Chris Lamoureux. Before we dive into his presentation in today's webinar, I just wanted to have a couple housekeeping items before we begin. The first is that this webinar is being recorded, so if either you would like to review today's webinar or if there are your colleagues that haven't had a chance to attend today, you're more than welcome to, you'll get an email with it and can review it later. In addition, if at any time you have any questions regarding today's content, feel free to leave that in the in your webinar panel, either the Q&A window or in the chat window, and I'll be reviewing that, and we'll either be answering them throughout or at the end of the presentation. So at this time, I would like to hand the microphone off to Chris Lamoureux. Take it away.
And thank you, Eric, and welcome to our audience in Canada and the US. And for the folks in the US, hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I guess we're all now on the home stretch into the upcoming Christmas holiday season. And I'm sure we're all looking forward to that break. Before we do that, though, I think the goal here is to talk a little bit about portals for sure, portal technology for sure, and in the context of wealth management, the context of financial advisors, their teams, and their interactions with all the people that support them in driving their business. And so to start it off, and for inspiration, you know, we always do a fair bit of research in preparation for these webinars. We consult with our clients in the space and come up with a set of thinking. So I stopped and paused for a second and thought, well, where is portal technology today? Where was it, let's say, a decade ago, and where is it going tomorrow? And so interestingly enough, you know, if you do a Google search and do portal and portal technology, what are you going to come up with? And you're going to come up with some interesting definitions out there. And it's apropos for this conversation, because I'm not sure what I found is where you want to head. You know, so certainly portal, it's a doorway. It's an entry point to get at something, to get at information, to see something on the other side. And that's really the first part of the definition that's listed here. From a pure technology standpoint, you know, historical definition, internet site, providing access or links to other sites, helping you to meet other people. It's a website that is a gateway. It has 4 services: search engines, email, links, and personalized content. All those are true, but how relevant are they today? So these definitions, I think we would argue, are a bit stale, a bit last generation capability, certainly not today's capability, and certainly not where the marketplace is going. So let's go forward a little bit and let's talk a bit about the future. And, you know, I really want you to think about several aspects as you think about portals and things that you want to enable to deliver a world-class capability, and things you want to avoid to avoid that nightmare portal scenario that we talked about in our title. You know, number one, what are you trying to accomplish? You're trying to accomplish an organizational culture and a team culture that is unique and different and relevant in the marketplace. You're trying to accomplish communication so that you can engage internally with all the stakeholders the most efficient and effective fashion possible. You're trying to generate productivity for the organization, to focus on the most valuable things and not so much the least valuable things. There's our picture. Okay, so we had this set up to generate this nightmare on portal Christmas picture for you. And this is that scenario where you haven't enabled all these things properly, and you're thinking about how to go about doing it so you can avoid the nightmare at Christmas scenario here. So again, let's get into it. Every client scenario I get into, and I get into a lot of them, our clients, been at this for an awful long time, and I always try to start with some questions and really, what problem are you solving for? So when you think about your current portal, your current enablement of culture and communications and productivity, what are you thinking about here? What problems are you really trying to go after and solve for? Are they yesterday's problems? Are they tomorrow's problems? Are they because your employee base is disengaged? Are you losing some of your key financial advisors to competition for different reasons? Maybe it's the enablement of what they're trying to do in your organization. Is it because people are focusing on bureaucratic and administrative tasks versus the higher value type items? Are they seeing the direction that you're going in the digital age enablement, so that they know that you organizationally are motivated for the long-term success of the organization and what they're trying to offer to the end client and their teams? So you really, really, really want to be crisp about the problems that you're trying to solve for. And as a starting point, what I maybe take a look at is KPIs. And this might seem a bit abstract, and let's kind of redirect it in a way that makes some sense for you. So, ultimately, businesses are in the business of making money. And in wealth management, you make money by finding clients, by getting assets under management, by retaining those clients, by increasing those assets under management, et cetera. So we've listed here several KPIs that businesses such as yours would be capturing. We've also listed a couple of ones that are relevant from an advisor portal standpoint that gets at engagement. And if you look at that bottom one, we oftentimes see this in the context of a customer net promoter score. How likely is that customer of yours going to recommend you to one of their friends, one of their colleagues, so that you can increase the value of your business and get new clients? In the same way, you want to think a little bit about how your employees are perceiving your organization. How likely are they to recommend another financial advisor come into the fold, or another great resource come into the fold, or a student coming out of school who's a top performer that you think, man, we want to have top talent in our company, and here's some people that we can get that are fresh and new. We're going to inject some great blood and thoughts into the organization. So you want to think about what KPIs matter and what things are really going to move the needle in your business. So we'll start with productivity first. And productivity is one of those notorious things that is hard to get at. Bosses always want to measure it. It can oftentimes take a lot of effort to measure it, and people never trust the results. But at the end of the day, it's the lifeblood. It's the heartbeat of what you do. It's a heartbeat of achieving success. But what does that mean, and how do we really get at productivity? So most executives, most people, if they're not thinking about it deeply, think that it's simply the sum of the individuals and all the work that they do to make up the output that drive the results. Okay? So I'm spending time on a webinar. Eric's here helping me set up and support that webinar, drive the material and the thinking. Collectively, we hope to get some results of that. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but is it the right area of focus for our team to focus on? So one of the key things about productivity is not just the individuals and they're performing tasks in the most important fashion, but are they performing the right tasks? Are they doing the right things day in, day out to drive the results? Is your advisor portal supporting them in doing the right things day in and day out, and preventing them or finding ways to minimize the things that take up their time and their productivity for the real high value stuff to get at the maximum results for your company? So then you have to think about, where are they spending their time? And it's not just the advisors, it's their teams, the teams that are directly supporting the advisor and the teams that are supporting all advisors and all of their teams. Where are they spending their time? Because if you center on some of that and some clarity around that, you're then going to create the advisor portal that works for the business. That isn't just sexy because it's got some glitzy design and look and feel. It needs to have that for sure, but it also needs to be valuable. So if you think about where wealth managers want to spend time, well, they certainly want to spend time in prospecting. They want to extend that referral network. They want to meet with new prospects, new clients, find ways to get known in their local marketplace, their geography, their unique value proposition within the marketplace. They absolutely have to service clients on their clients' existing portfolio with them in your organization. They have to answer queries. They have to resolve issues. They have to do time in the core beef of the business, which would be the financial planning aspect. That's your core good and valuable services that you're offering. And then you really want to go above and beyond. You want to be in that education game, that value add game. You know, as a business owner, we often think of our partners, you know, working together to solve a common problem, but how can we jointly help each other to get into success in the marketplace as we go forward? So it's not just providing the core service, but it's also, hey, I've got a friend who's in this business, maybe they can help you, client kind of scenario. So that's where we want them to spend their time. The question is, are they really spending their time there? And you can see different metrics. Some of these are generally available. We've looked at different studies. We pulled some information in kind of an aggregate manner that suggested that, you know, in the order of about 2 full days of a week for an advisor is spent on bureaucratic tasks. Now, those are important. They have to get done, right? But what we don't want them to do is spend all of their time on that. Ideally, what could we do with the advisor portal technology and capability to take that 2 full day and lop off? Can we find a way through our thinking about business process enabled by technology, communications and broken telephone and third-party stuff that prevents the ability from you to try to take out administrative time and put it into value-add client time and prospect time. So a simple way I look at it is, you know, if you establish what you understood as the norm in your environment, lop off a day. Try to take that 2 days down to 1 day. That would create a significant value add for your advisor, their teams, and your clients, and ultimately your business. You know, we're going to talk a bit about ways to doing that. You know, so some of the things and techniques that we're starting to see and help with our clients, things would be like aggregating data, so you don't have to go out and find and look for data. It's there at your fingertips. Things like, and these are underpinnings underneath the portal, where all the solutions that comprise what you're trying to do for your teams are integrated, aggregated to create a better value prop and an easier way of conducting business. Want to think about things like notifications and workflows where it's push versus pull, so you can get the most relevant things that have to get acted on right away. An advisor can work on it maybe on their mobile phone when they're traveling to a client. They have to be parked, of course, but they can get that work done while they're waiting in somebody's lobby versus having to be chained to their desk to get that done. So you have to start to think about these techniques and what you're trying to accomplish for your community here. So we'll take a look at some of the numbers here, and I'll just call out a couple more. I'm going to call out the one in the middle first because it's the most relevant one. Clients are 6 more times likely to be highly engaged with rapid response companies. So this means that clients are expecting their advisors to be super fast at responding, which means your portal, all the things that underpin the advisors and the teams also have to be super fast. So anything that we can do to make things faster and more efficient, this is arguing that that's a very positive thing from an engagement standpoint, which I would tell you will always lead to results. We talked about the administrative time and the amount of time spent. Again, you can ponder that one. You know, I look at workload a little bit at the top one as a business owner again and a leader of teams. I'm very cognizant of how much pressure we put on our people to achieve results. And the one thing I know, you know, from over time, and you sometimes lose sight of it. You know, we started this company a decade ago or so, and we're going to be nimble, we're going to be lighter, we're going to be fun and engaging and all those things. And you started with the right intentions, but just like the tax code, things get layered in. Oh, what about, oh, we got to do that too. Oh, we've got to be regulatory compliant. And before you know it, you've got such a cumbersome tax load and a workload on your personnel that in order just to get out the door, you know, they've got to complete a 10-hour day versus an 8-hour day, with the 8-hour day, and the most important part of that time is focused on the customer. And so it doesn't happen always on purpose. It happens because we forget that we add in things, but the net effect is we lose the employee along the way. We burn them out, they leave for a new field, and so on and so forth. We don't want to do that. We want great people to stay with us. Every company wants that. Okay, so what are the challenges? You got lots of challenges for sure. You've got regulations and compliancy that is critical. If you don't get that right, you don't have the license to do business. You've got things from a technology standpoint. You've got to stay current with modern day consumer trends. How do you stay current with companies like Apple and Google who can throw a gazillion dollars at tech where you can't, right? How do you stay current with things like cybersecurity and that which not only is it something that is there, it's getting worse and tougher to deal with. Things like fraud and money laundering and that are getting more invasive, and you can get attacked from all parts of the world in this. So how do you deal with that? And ultimately, how do you retain your talent? How do you attract and retain those people that you want to keep because they're great for your business, they're great for your clients, and you don't want to lose them? You got a tough mix of things to face, and yet, you know, you can do it. So what else do you have to think of? We talked about productivity at length, culture and communication. So think about the things that either prevent engagement or the positive side you want to do way better to attract engagement. Poor communication, messages going out at the wrong times, in the wrong way, not being seen until too late. Not allowing enough time for training and think time for people to think about what they're doing so they can do a better job. How do you enable the access to the tools and the resources that are the DNA of your company and let them collaborate and do better together? Remember that message at the beginning, the sum of the parts fits in this capacity as well. So the impact and some statistics here. You know, they're relevant and they're important. And I don't think this portal webinar today is necessarily focused on employee engagement and disengagement, but the facts are alarming if you don't get that right. So if you're in that normal nightmare scenario, you've got to act fast, because if you don't get this right, people start to walk with their feet and they go elsewhere. If you demonstrate that you're on the right track and you're investing in it, they're staying. And their clients are staying as a result as well. So, you know, if you go back to the positive side of things, we're trying to look for tools, techniques, capabilities that help everybody be more productive, and be productive in the right ways as well. Make it an interesting and unique experience. We're looking for reduced workloads. We're looking not only to provide training, but to provide insights and analytics and perspectives that are real time, that fit the DNA of your company. So there's formal training. That's absolutely a big aspect of what training is all about for people to learn. But there is what we call on-the-job training too, which is as valuable, if not more valuable, things that you learn day in and day out because you've got the ability to get at an expert or someone who's been there and done that and been successful at something, and they're able to share that learning. So you're trying to enable that and enable that fast and make it seamless and frictionless in the experience as you go forward. And if you do that, you get turnaround. People are happier to come to work. It's fun. They're more productive. Come to work more often. You decrease your turnover. And the net byproduct of this, if you engage properly digitally as well as in your overall mainline culture, is bottom line business results, which gets back to the KPIs that we talked about right at the beginning. We want to affect the KPIs. Happier customers, happier employees, better KPIs for your business. So now we're going to talk about technology trends, and one of the premises of this first webinar here, or this webinar, is we're going to talk a bit about the building blocks that you got to think about as you go forward. We're going to have an upcoming webinar in the new year, earlier in the new year, where we're actually going to bring in one of our clients, we hope, and talk a little bit about the practical application of some of this. But I really want to give you a sense of some things to think about, some trends that are going on that if you're, let's say, in a good spot today, how do you stay there? How do you continue to invest and go forward? If you're not in a good spot, how do you catch up, right? And how do you stay with the so-called Joneses, but eventually leapfrog those Joneses to achieve those KPIs? And so the areas are kind of 5 in total that we'll cover. We'll cover at a high level, but I want to get you thinking around the opportunity space for improvements in your advisor portal. Process automation, virtual workspaces, data-driven, predictive analytics, artificial intelligence. And I want you to think about the hierarchy here. And we're going to start with the first one because really, you're not going to go to artificial intelligence if you don't have the foundation to accomplish that. So think about, I'm building a house and I got a nice property. I'm putting in a foundation for that house. I can picture someday that I want a great pool in the backyard. You don't have to build that today, but you have to have a sense that I want to rough it in and I want to eventually get it there. Or maybe I want to build a sunroom in the back of my house, or a new room over my garage as my kids get older. Maybe I need my escape room if I want to get up in there. So I need you to think about the journey, not the final destination of being there today. It's going to start with simple process automation. It's going to, at the same time, probably think about virtual workspaces, which are the things that you're going to do to model what you do if you're in the office and somebody's working right beside you. That's what you're thinking about there. You're thinking about data and making data-driven decisions, not gut check decisions. You're going to think about advancing the ball with data and thinking about what can the data do to help you digitally to predict some recommendations to an advisor and their team in order to do something better. And then ultimately, I don't even want to say this is the holy grail because I don't think that's true. I think this is actually happening right now. You're thinking about the self-learning model where the technology itself, based on information being collected, is able to, with business rules and logic, generate things on your behalf and your organization's behalf. So these are all building blocks. So let's start with process automation. And I always would tell any client that the starting point for automation is knowledge of where you're spending your time. So in order for you to automate a process, and whether you should automate a process, you should try to understand a bit about what that process is costing you. Is it costing you issues in quality, in which case you've got to resolve that? Is it costing you time, and time across too many people, too many hoops, right? Is it an irritant for your advisor community, taking them off the ball of their mainline value proposition and spending time with their clients? So the more that you can get at the data, right, around that, the more informed you are of the key processes that you want to automate that underpin what your advisor portal is doing for your community here. So think about simple things. Can you pre-populate forms with information that are being currently manually repeated each and every time? That's a simple form of process information that, I think we can all get our heads at. Think of push and pull information. So the scenario here we're talking about is notifications that go out to the advisors and their teams to act on something or to be aware of something. So, today, and if any of your sports fans, you probably have signed up for notifications about the score of your favorite teams. It's a way for me to personalize what's important for me. It's a way for an advisor to personalize things that are important for them, as well as for advisors and yourselves to personalize things that are important to the business to get done at the right time. Think about workflow and think about the time spent in email traffic back and forth. Hey, did this get done? I'm not sure. Let me check up on that. Could you enable workflow capability through technology that actually facilitates a much faster, more efficient process? I see simple things that are available to us, such as signatures. It used to be that signatures all had to be done by hand. Somebody had to come in and physically be in front of your desk. You had to sign it off. And you might still have to do that for knowing your client kind of routines and things like that from a compliance standpoint. But today, the ability exists to digitally get sign off and to pass that signed off document to other people who then have to sign it off and then close that all out through digital technology. And that digital technology is not that expensive anymore. And you could accomplish that as you think about processes that you need to have automated. Virtual workplaces. And I love this one because I think modeling what you can do in an office simply with a person beside you is a big factor in productiveness and efficiency. And the more you can knock down walls between teams, across teams, walls that are created due to geography and separation, and find ways to create virtual workspaces, the more you've accomplished the aspect of what we talked about at the beginning around creating a culture and a communication, a collaborative environment for everybody. So some of the capabilities that exist, right, are trying to replicate that, and they're current and they're relevant and they're available and they're not that expensive. So think of things like click to chat or chat bots or virtual water cooler. Eric and I this morning had a quick conversation about this webinar. It was easy and simple to do. He was right outside my office. We chatted about it. We got something done in 5 minutes. Think about how much tougher that conversation is when you do it over email. It's a bit easier over telephone. And some of those conversations demand telephone or email, but some could be a simple chat. How do I do this? How do we replicate a more complex conversation using a whiteboard, but capture that digital information captured on that whiteboard running right then and there so that we can act on it going forward, right? How can you enable things like smart virtual personal assistants? So if you get back to that rapid response scenario that customers want and employees want and advisors want, you can do that through some of these techniques. So you have to start looking at these sub-capabilities that you want to actually engage in, support the engagement of your advisors from a virtual workplace standpoint. Data-driven decisions. Okay, that's out there a lot. It's been out there for a couple of years now. It's certainly a heavy focus of my company. Data at the beginning there. But what is data? Data is meaningless without something else to go along with that. It's a bit like oil. Oil is not meaningful until it's really been refined. And then it gets refined into something that can get used and be productive for something, to help operate a car, a lawnmower, to be used in the creation of a tire, as an example. So data is a bit like that. It's about the interpretation of that information. And really for most businesses, what they've been struggling with is how to get data off a spreadsheet, how to get data off a form, how to put it into at least an enterprise repository, but then collate and collect that data so that it can be analyzed. Analyzed by a data scientist in some cases, analyzed by the advisors and the teams or yourselves in other cases. So you're really trying to surface the key data in all the different forms. It could be process documentation that needs to get captured as data. If you can store it as data and make that searchable, somebody looking for something on your portal can that much faster find something they need and get something done. Okay. Again, you want to center in around the most valuable things. I also think here data is relevant for the people that run the advisors. Some of the people that we advise and we coach, I always come back to, well, what is the data telling us? Well, we're not looking at the data. Well, how do we look at the data and the engagement on the advisor platform, the portal platform? What is it telling us? Is it telling us where people are spending their time? Is it telling us what people are searching for and finding or not finding? Hey, if they're all searching for something, maybe that has to go to the front page of the portal, right? As an example. So the uses metrics, just like you would with a public website, you got to study it and you got to use it to your advantage to make decisions about your portal going forward. If nobody's coming and there's no adoption on it, you've got one problem. If a lot of people are coming there and they can't find things, that's another problem, right? And if they find things, if they're there and they can find things, how can you go one step further and take the data that much more in your business? So now we keep going. So you've got the virtual workspace. You've got the process automation. You've got data. Now here's where it gets powerful. And this is where we got to get to, folks. How do we take that data and first start to think about predictive analytics so that things like recommending something automatically to an advisor happens? You know, and I'll give you a simple one. I use Gmail, and Gmail has come out with a feature right now where it actually finishes my sentence. And there's a bit of concern, I think, a bit about that from a gender standpoint. I've just read. But what I love about it, it's helping me finish a sentence faster, with better grammar, with higher quality, right the first time. And so you can see where that predictive analytic, because they can see based on what I'm typing, where I'm going with my sentence. And they're finishing it so I can get it out the door faster and satisfy all that criteria. But wow, what could we do if we had at our fingertips the information, the data, and the tools to start to offer up recommendations? And this is a bit of start small, think big thing. And this is intertwined into maybe many other applications. But I want you and the audience to think about things that are relevant on your portal specifically. Maybe there's something that you can think about that's like what I said there that could be offered up faster than what you're thinking about it today. This stuff, although it seems a bit futuristic, it's happening fast in the marketplace. The costs maybe are higher now, but they're coming down, and you're going to be able to create some things that are going to help you. And those analytics could, you know, again, if we think creatively here, you know, they could help you with client acquisition. If you're trying to figure out how do you move a potential prospect to an actual client, they could help you with keeping clients. They could help you with offering up, you know, new products and new capabilities for your client if you want to go to that length. You know, and those are all the things we want you to think about. Artificial intelligence. You know, many of you have, you probably heard the recent announcement of General Motors cutting jobs and factories in Canada and the United States. And I think there's always a concern about the threat of automation and technology. And I think that's very important here as we think about things. You know, when we talk about artificial intelligence from a Veriday perspective, really what we're coming back at isn't really displace jobs. Robo-advisor could be seen as displacing a financial advisor in your mainstream, that's for sure, certain. But really what we're talking about here is taking out the low value work and going to the higher value work. That's really what we're talking about here. And as you get into that higher value work, how do you up the ante? How do you up the equation on giving both advisors and their clients more rapid, more meaningful recommendations based on the knowledge of the business that's been collected. And the knowledge of the business today is collected through people primarily and their thought processes. Tomorrow it will absolutely be collected by people, but some of the technology advances are going to help and give some more advanced recommendations without human intervention. And what do we hope to do? We hope to increase productivity. We hope to reduce workload or shift workload on higher value stuff, and then help you and the advisors make more informed decisions going forward. Okay, so this is coming. Maybe not here today for the space that we're talking about, but it's coming. We're starting to think about these types of advances on behalf of our clients because they're asking us these questions, and we're putting our perspectives out here to make sure the dialogue is going and make sure we're thinking about where we want to be next year and the year after that and the year after that. So how do you organize yourself? And really, today, you have to think about your starting point. And if you go back to the beginning part of the conversation, the nightmare portal, if you're in the nightmare portal, you're in a much different spot than if you think you're in good shape, your advisors think you're in good shape, and your clients think you're in good shape. But no matter what you do, you got a set of steps that you got to go through. And we're going to spend more time on these steps at the next webinar because we're going to try to take this and make it real in a particular client standpoint. But I just want to quickly run through some of these things and reinforce some of the messages I gave at the beginning. So why are you trying to do this? Why are you trying to make advances in your advisor portal and your underlying technology? What are you trying to enable that's different than where you're at today? What are the KPIs that you're trying to enable? What's your strategy going forward and the blueprint for the digital that underpins the advisor in this spot, but all the other digital? Where your investment's going to go within the department that controls the advisor portal and elsewhere. Get your metrics together. It's no good if you don't have math. If you try to go up with a business case based on this presentation without the math, it'll get shot down. You probably know that, but I'll just reinforce that. And the more you're in the math, the better your decision making, and I think the better your opportunity to grow your business. Okay? You want to think about the next items, I think, a bit together, the employee experience and the organizational change. If you are at the low end of technology enablement and you're trying to move to artificial intelligence, you've got a big change curve. If you've got an older population of advisors, some of them might come with you on that curve, some might not. So you need to think about your rollout strategy and how you support everybody in your team, not just the people that are technology advanced because they're fresh out of the school and this is what they learned in school. Because people that have been in business for 30 years probably would not know anything about artificial intelligence and probably don't care, okay? Unless it can really help them. Understand your processes. And I always think about processes from a customer journey and an employee journey standpoint. Make sure you got both of those thought through, at least at a high level. Make sure you got your major ones. So as you start to think about the technology enablement in this area, you're thinking about the effect of change on the customer and the employees that are involved. Information and technology. I'm just going to leave you with this. Again, think about the process of getting there, not the end state. So you got to think about the steps that you can put in, quarter in, out, week in, week out, that lead you on this journey. Because I think the one thing we've seen loud and clear in our client space is the days of one and done are gone. The days of building an advisor portal and not investing in it for 10 years, they're not there anymore. They're not there for any technology platform for the most part. So how do we create an architecture? How do we create a framework that we can add capabilities in smaller chunks as we go? And I think if you do that, you get more receptiveness in your employee community, you'll get more receptiveness with your bosses on the business case to advance some of this stuff, and you'll be in a better spot overall. So I'm gonna stop there, and I think I'm gonna hand it back over to Eric.
Thank you very much, Chris. So now would be a good time if anybody has any questions regarding the content of today's webinar. please feel free to leave us a question, whether that be in the Q&A panel or in the chat box. We'll just take a minute here just to give everyone a chance to type out their questions if they have any. So again, just a reminder, because I know some people were joining a bit late, and if some of you would just in general like to review today's presentation or share it with a colleague, just a reminder that today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending out a copy of the recording afterwards. So it appears like there's no questions at this time. If you do happen to think of a question or didn't get your question answered today, when we send you the recording, feel free to respond back to us, and we'll make sure that we answer your question regarding today's webinar. At this time, we're going to be ending today's webinar, and just wanted to thank both all the attendees who joined today, and thank Chris as well for his very informative presentation. Thank you, and have a great rest of your week.